the man on the sidewalk. Although we were both confused and a little freaked out, my partner and I never talked about the incident. About a year later, I met a girl who lived in the apartment building across the street. In a city this big, that's unusual, but I think sometimes things happen for a reason. I told her about my one experience there and the disappearing man on the sidewalk. She immediately wanted to know what he looked like. I described him as somewhere in his 40s or 50s, neatly trimmed beard with thick curly hair. Then her face went dark. "That was David," she said. "He used to live in that building." I asked her to tell me more. She hesitated and shook her head like she didn't want to talk about it, but I persisted. "David was one of the neighbors when I was growing up," she said. "He dropped dead from a stroke one night right there on the sidewalk." When I asked her when it had happened, she said, 20 years ago. I said that was impossible, that it must have been someone else. But the expression on her face told me she knew more. Although I didn't get it out of her that night, she eventually opened up. I found out that my partner and I hadn't been the first people to see David after he died. Every so often people would see David. Sometimes he was walking down the street like he was coming home from work. Other times he was seen standing still and staring at the sidewalk near the area where he'd died. Most of the time, he was gone before anyone could do a double take. But some people in the neighborhood claimed that they'd actually tried to communicate with him, and that he'd seemed not to hear them. Always when they looked away, even for a second, he would vanish. I've heard stories like this before. Only in my case, we hadn't just seen David. We'd touched him. We even lifted him onto the stretcher. Throughout it all, he felt as real to me as anyone else I'd ever tried to help. That's the part that really frightens me. The one thing I can't just put away and forget. I left my job a few months after that. The incident with David and what I later learned left me changed. Every time I answered a call, I found myself wondering if the person I was working on was real or a ghost. That's not something to carry with you on a job where every second counts. So I left. The city streets are filled with ghosts. And when you can no longer tell the living from the dead, it's probably best to stay away.